What's up and welcome to My Point of View. I am your fat and opinionated host, Cinema Shogun. And pretty early on, after Bryan Kohberger was arrested, we found out that not only was Kohberger studying criminology and all of that good stuff that we've dived into a lot on this channel, but he also applied for a job at a local police department. Yes, Bryan was going hard to somehow, some way, slither his way into the criminal justice system. He wanted a position of power or something. I don't know what was driving Kohberger for sure, but knowing what he's accused of, I can't help but feel sick to my stomach when I think about all of the things that he was getting into. Applying for jobs at the police department, going to college for this. You took classes under who? You know, it's all really creepy. But now, the New York Times just released an email that Bryan Kohberger sent to the police chief that he was trying to get a job from. And this happened, I would say, I don't want to put an exact date on it. I'll have to see if the date is provided here. April 12th. So months before the iDAHO 4 situation. Now, I'm going to get into this email. We're going to read through it. But first, I have a question for you all that I want to hear your answer down in the comments below. How long do you think Bryan planned on doing this? Do you think that this was a situation where he grew this infatuation with one of these women, or he had an issue with one of these women, or maybe even Ethan, and then he decided to do this? Or do you think as far back as April, when he's trying to get into this police department, do you think he already had it on his mind that he was going to do something terrible to someone one day? Personally, I think he was planning on doing something terrible one day. I think his whole education, this job interview, everything, I think it all has to do with what he eventually wanted to get away with. But that's just me speculating. Let's go ahead and dive right into this article. The man charged with fatally unaliving 4 University of Idaho students was interviewed for a job 7 months before the killings by the chief of a nearby police department, according to newly released records. Bryan Kohberger had an online meeting with the police chief in Pullman, Washington, where Mr. Kohberger lived at the time of the slayings, according to emails between Mr. Kohberger and the chief, Gary Jenkins. Chief Jenkins has since been hired as the campus chief of police at Washington State University in Pullman, where Mr. Kohberger was a PhD student studying criminology. Here's the email. It was a great pleasure to meet with you today and share my thoughts and excitement regarding the research assistance for public safety, Mr. Kohberger wrote in the email on April 12, 2022, which was released in response to public records request by the New York Times. The chief responded shortly after, saying, "Great to meet and talk with you as well." At the time, Mr. Kohberger was finishing his master's degree studies at DeSales University in Pennsylvania and preparing to start his first semester in a PhD program in criminology in Washington. The emails indicate that he was among 4 candidates who applied for the research assistant position at the police department. Now, imagine a world where Bryan somehow got this job. Imagine a world where Bryan somehow became a police officer. I think we could all say that we're glad that that didn't happen. Now, this email doesn't say much. There's not much to it. But at the very least, it shows that Bryan Kohberger had a relationship, not necessarily a close relationship, but he at the very least had a relationship with law enforcement in the area. I would assume some of them knew of him. maybe not too personally, but I think it's safe to say that he had a closer relationship with some of these officers than maybe your average person. And the reason people are so adamant about looking into these things when it comes to Bryan Kohberger is because people want to know what was really going through his mind at the time of doing all of this. Because on one train of thought, you could look at this situation and be like, the dude was doing everything he could to become successful. He was going to school. He was applying for this job. Maybe he was really interested in law enforcement and this and what have you. But you can't look over those details when you see what he's accused of. It's incredibly hard. At this point, I'll be honest, it's impossible for me personally to separate Bryan's education, to separate Bryan wanting to become an intern in this police department or whatever he had planned. I can't separate that from the crime. I simply cannot. Some people can. But I can't. I can't help but feel like this is all tied together. I can't help but feel like Bryan did all of these things because he wanted to become more educated so he could possibly get away with this. And it didn't work. It didn't work. But has it worked before? Was Bryan, the better question is, why was Bryan so confident in this crime? We know that he thinks that, we know that he's a smart guy, according to his teachers, his professors. And then according to students, they say that Bryan would always try to show off how smart he is. Is this Bryan trying to show off how smart he is again? Does Bryan really think that he's going to walk away from this? Does he think that he could beat these charges in court? I don't think he can. I really don't think he can. But either way, I tell you what, this is going to be a case that people study for years to come in a weird, creepy way. Everything's going to go full circle here. One day in the future, college students at Washington State University, at Idaho State University, wherever, they're going to be studying this case because there is a plethora of information here. And I understand why people are so interested. And to take it one step further, I understand some people's frustration with this case because we've gotten a lot of information, more information than we get in some cases. But what we haven't gotten is the connective threads, if you will. It's like we got this piece of information, that piece of information, that piece of information, but we don't have the strings to tie it all together necessarily. And I think that in an odd way, even though we got more information in this case than most cases, that makes the situation even more frustrating for some people because it's like we have the picture right here, but it's kind of blurry still. And it's like you're just constantly trying to wipe off the mirror so you can get a clearer picture, but you can't. Because every time you think you got a clearer picture, some more information comes out and it fogs up the glass again. And then by the time you wipe it off and you think you're seeing the situation for what it is, another batch of info comes out. And like I said, it's the connective threads that are missing. And then, of course, you have the conflicting stories of, was Bryan at this restaurant or was he not? There's these simple little questions that, if answered truthfully, would bring everything together. But we're not obligated, or they're not obligated to give us that info. So we have to wait. That's life. But at the very least, I mean, it's interesting seeing this little email. Not much to it, but it shows... It shows, for one, that Bryan had some sort of connection with this police department. I'm not saying that they helped him with anything or anything like that. Please don't go crazy like that. But at the very least, he has some connection. It shows you that he was going that route. Like, he was reaching out to these people. Imagine reaching out and emailing cops a couple of months before you allegedly killed 4 people. Really weird. Let me know your thoughts, though, down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.